I'm fine, but Shirley's not. An imposter walked into your office, pretending to be me, telling you lies. You can call me Shirley, Peggy, Peggy Ann, Vicky, Ruthie, Helen, Marjorie, Clara, Marcia, Mary, Vanessa, Nancy, Mike, and Sid. Are you drugging her? Are you drugging me? Get away from her now. No, it's not a hoax. There were orgies in the forest. I'm fine, but Shirley's not. Welcome to Extraordinary Stories Podcast. Hey, how are you? Are you well? Are you good? I am. Sorry if you have been waiting a little while for this episode, if you're someone who's all caught up and waiting for the next one. Basically, lockdown is making it really hard to record episodes because the thing is, people are just in their houses all the time, so it's really difficult to try and find quiet times, quiet spaces, and, not to take us down a road that you don't really need to go down, but basically, the space I record in is right next door to my neighbour's living room, and usually she's very lovely and very quiet. She's a very nice neighbour. However, recently her dog became very, very ill, and she had to take her dog to her mother's farm where the dog now lives. So she is home alone, and I think it's made her quite sad, and how she's dealing with that sadness. And I kind of, all power to her, respect to her. She's deciding to play pop music, basically 24 hours a day, really loud. She's dancing around her living room to some loud pop music. And every time I go to record, I'm like, oh, there we go. There's more Enrique Iglesias coming through the wall. Great. So anyway, yeah. Those of you who've been asking me about shout-outs, I am going to bring back doing shout-outs. Don't think I've entirely decided not to do those. I haven't. They've just been on a little hiatus. Otherwise, I'm just looking forward to telling you this story. I think you're going to like this one. There's similarities with a story I told a long, long time ago. And it took me a little while to work out, hang on, have I told this story? But no, I realised I haven't. Okay, are you ready? Okay, let's go. Okay, this is the story of 4 different females. We have Mattie, we have Shirley, we have Cornelia, and we have Flora. There's 2 of them who are really, really at the sort of centre of the story, but everyone plays their part. Now, just before we go any further, I have never pretended to be an expert in psychology, and I'm not pretending in this episode that I am. I'm just telling you the story as I know it. Okay. Right, let's imagine it is in 1940 and you're at home. It's 1940 and it's the evening. Now let's also imagine you live in Dodge, Minnesota. And you're in your living room, it's dark outside. Right, let's say it's about 9 p.m. Now a face appears at your window and it's watching you from outside. It's watching you in your living room. What would you do? I know what I'd do. I'd scream and run like a girl out the house. No, I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't. I would calmly walk over to the window and I'd ask if this person was okay. Nah, you see, I'm lying. I don't think I would do that either. I would be probably more likely, actually, realistically, I'd probably try and grab my phone and film them. But maybe that's just a symptom of the age that we live in. Anyway, did the people of Dodge, Minnesota, freak out and did they lose their minds when a face appeared at the window, staring in at them? No, they didn't. Because it happened quite a lot. It was just Martha Mason, or Mattie, as she was known. And Mattie, well, she did this quite a lot. At night, she'd often be seen lurking around the neighbourhood. Mattie was sort of known as... Right, now here's the problem. In those days, and I'm saying this because it was a phrase they used in those days, she would probably have been considered the local nutjob. She would have been considered the local crazy. Terms that we don't tend to use these days, but probably would have been used back then. So she was a resident who, along with her family, had lived there for many, many years. She was the sort of neighbourhood weirdo, if you will. So along with her husband Walter and her teenage daughter Shirley, the Mason family, they lived in, a really nice, respectable part of the neighbourhood. And those who knew Mattie, they called her bizarre. What a weird thing. I was thinking about this, I was like, I can take being called almost anything, but bizarre, I would hate to be called bizarre. It just doesn't mean anything. I think it's really odd. Well, so Mattie had some odd behaviours. There was the sort of lurking around the neighbourhood at night, staring in through people's windows. People would say she screeched really loudly. She had this almost witch-like voice. Now, the thing about Mattie is she never had much recollection of these nighttime lurkings that she ever did. Whenever people asked her about it, she was never really able to say, oh yeah, I was. I was out and about in the neighbourhood, staring through people's windows. She couldn't really recollect it. Now, her husband Walter, he was a very intellectual type. An architect, no less. Fancy. And their daughter Shirley, who was around about this time when we're going to start the story, she was finishing up school. She was looking to go on to college. And although Shirley was also of the intellectual type, her real passion was art. She loved to paint. Bloody loved it. And so the time came for her to sort of follow her dreams. And at age 19, she leaves school and she goes to art college in Minnesota. So Shirley goes and she studies and she graduates. And then there's this period of time after she graduates and she works in various teaching positions and she keeps working on her own paintings. Now she's moving around a lot as she does this. So she's moving from sort of city to city, all around the place, not really ever settling for too long in one place, and she'll just move on. Now she decides in early 1950 she's going to move to New York and she's going to work there. She's going to find a teaching position there. She wants to kind of spread her wings and see what she can do. Now this all sounds bloody lovely for Shirley. Yes, her mother might have been the local weirdo, but she was an adult now. She was moving to New York. She had her future ahead of her. Here's the thing, was it all lovely for Shirley? Was it all calm and artistic? Was it all days spent, in front of an easel, wrapped in a big, I don't know, those things that artists wrap themselves in, like, that are covered in paint and all that sort of stuff? No, the truth is it wasn't. From about the age of 14, Shirley Mason had been struggling with her own mental health issues. So, there had been periods of depression, there were blackout periods, there were days, sometimes weeks, when she just couldn't get out of bed. And these had kind of dogged her for years and years and years. And within her family, I guess that was really difficult, because with her mother's mental health being really off the scale and quite unmanageable, Shirley had to try and keep a lot of her own mental health problems to herself. But when she'd got to that stage where she was an adult and she graduated college and was moving around, she had visited a psychiatrist, a Dr. Wilbur, and this doctor said to her, look, what you've got is depression, and given the issues that your mother has, it's not unsurprising that you two have some mental health issues. Take some sleeping pills, go to bed, and you'll be fine. Now, I need to point out two things here. This is early 1950s, and the study of psychiatrics, it's fairly new, and it's fairly experimental. And secondly, it was not even it was actually mortifying to go to a therapist. It was an immediate, she crazy situation if you had to go and speak to someone about what was going on upstairs in your brain. It's so different to the way that we talk about mental health now. I mean, it's worlds apart. So people didn't really want to do it. Sometimes they were forced to do it because of behaviours, because of, they were displaying strange behaviours, and it would take a long time for people to build up the courage to go and do it. Anyway, Shirley had, as a young woman, had gone and said, look, I know I'm suffering from some problems, and I want to talk about it. And this doctor told her, here's some sleeping pills, you'll be fine. So Shirley's in New York, and she's starting to feel like her mental health might be spiralling a bit out of control. And she makes an appointment with a new doctor. Only here's the thing. It's not a new doctor. It's the one she saw years ago who gave her the sleeping pills. A Dr. Cornelia Wilbur. What a name. What a woman. A really, formidable type. Had that sort of, I guess what you'd think a sort of 1950s doctor might look like. She had sort of tight, curled hair, the kind that you're like, oh, that's been in rollers all night. And those glasses, do you like those little black glasses that are pointy at the corners? They kind of point upwards. You know the things I mean? They look a wee bit severe. They're the kind of things that, what's her name again? Remember that pop star in the 90s? You say I only hear what I want to. Lisa Love or something. Lisa Love. Remember she tried to bring the look back and, it never really worked. In fact, the kind of glasses I mean? I think Ray-Ban have brought them back out, actually, I think. Anyway, sorry, I'll move on. The episode's not called Dr. Wilbur's Glasses, so let's move on from that. So Shirley arrives for an appointment, and she tells this doctor, she says, look, this is what's been happening. She's been blacking out. She's not sleeping. She goes into some things that she'd never really spoken about before. She starts to talk about her battle with anorexia. And then she tells Dr. Wilbur she's having these periods of time where she's finding herself in places and she can't remember getting there. So she'll find herself in a shop or on the other side of the city without a clue how she got there. Now, Dr. Wilbur says straight away, this is what we call a fugue, or a fugue state. It's the same thing your mother had. It's a dissociative state. So, I would like to give you some treatment for this. So, Dr. Wilbur, she's quite interested in Shirley. She's sort of going, this could be quite an interesting case. And what develops between the two women, it's, well, a bit of a friendship. People will say that Shirley had a massive crush on her female doctor and was willing to trust all that Dr. Wilbur advised. I mean, I get what she means. I have a very, very hot doctor. Oof. I think we've maybe all been there at one point. What did she actually advise? Well, Dr. Wilbur gives Shirley some pain medication for her cramps. I'll come back to that in a second. She gives her some barbiturates and some very, very powerful sleeping tablets. Now, the tablets that Dr. Wilbur gives her, they are a way higher dosage than normal. Because here's the thing about Dr. Wilbur, and here's what we need to know. She was experimental. She really wanted to succeed in this field. She wanted to be a badass doctor of psychiatry. Now, here's what's odd. So did Shirley. Now, odd, you might be thinking. You might be thinking, I'm sorry, Barry, I thought you said she was an artist and a teacher. And I did. But once she started her sessions with Dr. Wilbur, Shirley says, I think I'd like to train to be a psychiatrist. And so our good pal, the doctor, gives her a book on the subject, and Shirley takes it away to read it. And she reads this book and she determines, no, this is what I'd really like to do. I'd like to go and train as a medical professional and be able to help people with mental health issues. Fine. Good. So what starts to develop between the two is that Dr. Wilbur is paying a lot of home visits to Shirley. Much, much more than you would normally offer. Dr. Wilbur had begun to document Shirley as a sort of, I guess, possible case study of the effects of medication on what was being called dissociative. Is that how you say it? Dissociative disorders. And the two women, they're getting very, very close. I said I'd go back to her medication for cramps, her menstrual cramps. Well, remember, this is when hysteria was still a thing that doctors really believed in. They really believed that you could actually diagnose a woman, oh, she's just hysterical. That's what it is. Now, that's not what Dr. Wilbur is suggesting, but it's widely believed in the field that, you know, when a female comes complaining of mental problems, generally they're hysterical. Dr. Wilbur will say, I'm not so sure, I'm not quite willing to make that diagnosis yet, we're just going to keep going a little bit with Shirley. Now, it's at this time Shirley's fugue states are getting even worse. She is blacking out and she is waking up all over the place, just so many times without a clue where she is, how she got there. So, if Dr. Wilbur is thinking at this point, oh, I've got quite an interesting case here in Shirley. What's about to come is going to rock those little black glasses off the doctor's face. Shirley has her regular scheduled appointment with Dr. Wilbur. And when she arrives, Dr. Wilbur says, how are you today? And the reply is, Well, I'm fine, but Shirley isn't. She is sick today, so I've come instead. What the fuck? Now that's actually what Dr. Wilbur is thinking, but it's not what she says. Very calmly she says, okay. Well, as I don't know who you are, why don't you tell me all about yourself? Sure, says Shirley. I'm Peggy. Peggy, the doctor says. Well, it's nice to meet you. Tell me all about yourself, Peggy. She says, I'm 11 years old. I stand up to people. I want to travel the USA. And I'm not afraid of anything. You see, here's the problem with Shirley. Shirley's afraid of everything. She's weak. She's vulnerable. But I'm not. So Dr. Wilbur is listening, taking notes, and she turns on her tape recorder. Damn bloody right, I'd be like pressing that record button straight away. So the session ends, and she's had a chat with Peggy. Now, as if that wasn't strange enough itself, the following day, Shirley arrives at the doctor's office and she says, I'm so sorry that I missed yesterday's appointment. Dr. Wilbur says, you didn't. Peggy was here. Shirley at this point quickly changes the subject. She says, I have to leave. I've got an appointment. And she goes. Dr. Wilbur is looking at her and she's thinking she has a far more serious psychiatric condition than I first thought. A week later is the next appointment and Dr. Wilbur is waiting with kind of excitement. She's like, who am I going to get today? Am I going to get Shirley? Am I going to get Peggy? Who's gonna walk through the door? Well, I tell you this. It's not Shirley. And it's not Peggy. It's Vicky. Shirley comes into the room, introduces herself as Vicky, and she has a French accent. Bonjour, madame. I am Vicky, I am French. I'm very polite, I'm very pleasant. I'm sure that's not what she said, or sounded like. But now this is personality number 3. We've had Shirley, we've had Peggy, now we've got Vicky. And what is so fascinating is that each of these personalities, right, they could tell the doctor different information about the others. So, what could Vicky tell us about Shirley? Because we've already heard that Peggy says Shirley's weak. Shirley's afraid of everything. What can Vicky tell us about Shirley? Well, she can tell us that when Shirley was a child, she had dolls. And her mother, Mattie, remember, the faces peering through the window, she had made the young Shirley call all of her dolls versions of Peggy. So the dolls were all called things like Peggy Ann, Peggy Sue, Peggy Mary, all these different things. And so Dr. Wilbur is trying to piece all this together, and she wants to dig a little bit deeper into Mattie, into Shirley's mother and what was going on there. Could Shirley's childhood help figure out why this woman had grown up with 3 different personalities? Well, yes indeed. And let's see what came to light. These other personalities could remember that Mattie used to beat the young Shirley around the face with her hand. She essentially would punch her in the face. She would slap her and she would make her cry. Mattie would lock the young Shirley in her bedroom for hours and just leave her there. Mattie would often, around the house, pretend that the young Shirley was invisible, that she couldn't see her, couldn't hear her. So you've got poor Shirley trying to have a conversation with her mother, and her mother's pretending she's invisible. And then more and more things start to come out in the sessions every time that Shirley isn't Shirley. Every time she's another one of these personalities. There's a horrendous story about the time when she was 9 years old and she had to have a tooth extracted. She says that Matty took her to the local dentist's house. He took her into a back room. Her mother put a light in her face. She was given drugs by the doctor and she was raped. Now all of this is all coming out through these other personalities. And Dr. Wilbur, she just wants to explore this further and further. But she thinks, okay, maybe I need to tell Shirley what I'm actually seeing here. So she does. The next time they have an appointment where it's not Peggy that turns up, or it's not French Vicky that turns up, she explains to Shirley, look, I think you have multiple identity disorder here. I think what's going on is you're all of these people, and every time you come to an appointment, I never know which personality we're going to get. What's funny is Shirley isn't even that surprised. She sort of takes it as, well, maybe that's a bit of an explanation of sorts. So, the doctor, she says to Shirley, look, I would like to, the next time you come in, as whatever personality that is, I would like you to go through some experiments with me where I can sedate you and I can go further into those repressed memories. Okay. Let's just consider the time period. Let's just remember. This was very, very early on in psychiatric treatment, and the experiments that were done, I mean, I'm sorry to say, but the word barbaric comes to mind. So there is video footage of Shirley being strapped to a table by Dr. Wilbur. She gets injected with a drug called phenol, which has this slightly sleepy and hallucinogenic quality about it. Basically, it's a sleeping tablet. Or no, I'm lying. It started as a painkiller, became a sleeping tablet. And it's now, you can only get it, I think, in the tiniest of doses. But remember what I said? It was a long time ago, and Dr. Wilbur, she liked the bigger dosages. So during some of these times when Shirley's strapped to a table, and say she's been injected with this when she's Peggy or she's Vicky, there's weird recordings of things like Dr. Wilbur saying to her, okay, I want you to tell me what happened last night. And Shirley on the table will say, nothing happened. And Dr. Wilbur will say, yes it did. Tell me what happened at 10:10 last night. What did your mother do to you? And the deeper under she went into this sedated state, the stories, they would just flow out. Shirley, under the influence of drugs, would say that her mother used to hold orgies in the nearby forest, and that as a child she would watch them. She would explain that her mother used to try and sexually touch her. And Dr. Wilbur recorded all of this, every little tiny bit. Now, here's the thing, Dr. Wilbur is thinking, I'm onto a massive discovery here. I'm onto a place at the table of psychiatry because I've got something really phenomenal happening here. And not for the right reasons, things start to develop very, very quickly. She ups Shirley's visits to 5 days a week. Wowzers. And now, as she does this, more and more personalities begin to emerge. If it's not Shirley, Peggy or Vicky, it's maybe Marcia, who's the artist and the writer. Or it's Clara, who's very, very religious. And then come along Mike, the first male personality to arrive. He's quickly followed by Sid, yet another male personality to arrive. And oh my god, very quickly, Shirley is displaying 10 different personalities. And Dr. Wilbur is continuing to drug Shirley and record all of these sessions. By this point, Dr. Wilbur had gone to other doctors with the story of her patient and the many personalities. And I think this is right. There was a fair amount of concern from other professionals. Like, they were asking questions like, ethically, is this okay? Is it alright to be strapping her to a table? Filling her full of drugs? Morally, where do we stand on this? But they were also asking another question, which I think is so vital. Is this all true? Like, there's nothing here that's being fictionalised. No, there's nothing that's kind of being a bit exaggerated. Is this all true? Dr. Wilbur will absolutely say yes, of course it is. At this time, Shirley shared an apartment with a friend of hers who said to her, you need to stop seeing this doctor. Because by this point, Dr. Wilbur is coming round and she's staying the night in Shirley's house. She's actually climbing into bed to administer more of these sleeping drugs to Shirley. By now, there is a total of 16 personalities inside of Shirley. And they would make a random appearance at a random time in front of Dr. Wilbur. Now, as I've made the point, what Cornelia Wilbur wanted was big things in her career, and here's what she chooses to do. She approaches a writer called Flora Schreiber. Everyone in this story has got excellent names. And she says to Flora Schreiber, look, I've got this client, here's the deal, she's got 16 personalities, and I want to turn this into a book. I want this to be a bestseller. And so they sit down and they start to write Shirley's story. And it deals with the story that I've just told you. Now, the book is called Sybil. Why? Well, because Dr. Wilbur didn't want to use Shirley's real identity. She wanted that to remain a secret. Which is why, if you've been hearing this and you're thinking, this somehow seems familiar to me, it's because that book would go on to sell nearly 10 million copies. And it was made into one of the biggest TV movies starring the late, great Sally Field. What an actress. You love me. You really love me. Or whatever she said. She said something like that. Now, there's a shift in the story here. The book's published. Sybil is a name that people are talking about. You know, they're interested in this. And Shirley walks into Dr. Wilbur's office and she hands her a letter. And the letter from Shirley reads this. Dear Dr. Wilbur, I am none of the things I have pretended to be. I'm not going to tell you there isn't anything wrong, but it's not what I have led you to believe. I do not have multiple personalities. I do not even have a double. I'm all of them. Essentially, I've been lying. The stories I told you about these fugues, these states I would go into, those two are lies. Now, hearing this, Dr. Wilbur is obviously looking at this and thinking, I have essentially made you the biggest part of my career. We've created a book. There's a film. This is pretty massive. And so what she says to Shirley is, I know exactly what's happening here. It is your brain being defensive. This is all true. You have all of these personalities. And Shirley says to her, no. No, and what we have done together is we have demonised my mother. And none of that's true. Nothing that I ever said my mother did was true. There were no orgies. She didn't abuse me. She didn't hit me. Yes, my mother had psychiatric problems. But none of what I told you about her was true. And together, we've created her as a monster. And it's not true. And with this, Shirley leaves Dr. Wilbur's office. Dr. Wilbur has a lot of thinking to do at this point. And it's then that Shirley returns with a second letter. She walks in to Dr. Wilbur and she hands her another letter which reads, last week, someone stalked into your office, imitated me, and tried to say that everything that had gone before was a lie. But I know you knew better. I know you knew better. At this point, Dr. Wilbur schedules sessions with Shirley 7 days a week. Because Shirley's gone to the place where she's saying it's fake, and now she's saying that actually someone else walked into that office with that letter. Oh my God, there are so many questions. Right. Can I take the first question from the floor, please? Ah, yes. A group of doctors. What would you like to know? Well, what they would like to know is any of this for real? Are you actually, Dr. Wilbur, planting what we call false memories in Sybil's brain while she's drugged? Dr. Wilbur says no. Now, one Dr. Scriber, he says, look, I've listened to the tapes. I've listened to the conversations you had when you'd put her under these drugs, you'd injected her. And I heard you telling her that she was all these different personalities during these sessions. And quite the argument breaks out between Dr. William, Quite the argument breaks out between Dr. Wilbur and Dr. Schreiber. But here's the thing, Dr. Schreiber, he never goes public with his belief that the multiple personalities are faked. Second question from the floor goes to Flora, the author. And it's a simple one. Is this all fictionalised in order to sell a book and make lots of money? Flora will say no. Look, we are being accused of creating a hoax. But I can assure you, this is no hoax. And the third and final question goes to Sybil. Sybil, is this all true? She says they keep saying I'm hysterical and that's what's causing it. And that's not true. I have these personalities inside of me. And so, with the book out, TV movie, the media attention shifts just a little, not too far, but just a little bit away from Sybil. Because you see, what has happened now is that this story has brought a wave of others like it. You've now got people on TV claiming they have 6 or 7 different personalities. Doctors around the world claiming that they are the leading world expert in this. And a lot of it's fake, and a lot of it's not. One of the really good things to emerge from the Sybil story is that there are advances in diagnosis and treatment, and that's great. I mean, that's what needed to happen. But there's still a lot of fakery. There's still a lot of people at the time suing each other over this. I mean, some of the stories are insane. Some of the people who were suing for their doctors were saying they would go to their doctor thinking that what they had was depression, and they would come out of their sessions being told that actually they had multiple personalities. And then you had these fakers who would come on TV and say, oh yes, I have 3 different personalities. Now, I'm not taking the piss here when I say this, but these people were just making it up. They'd be like, my name is Susan, but tomorrow I'll be Tammy. And right now, I could be Betty if you want me to be. I mean, it's just, it's insane. Although, I mean, I suppose kind of fun for them because they get to just pick these things. I mean, how crazy would that be if you were able to just be like, so I'm Barry, but I might not be. I might be Beyonce. Da-da-da-da-da-da. You know what I mean? Or, I wouldn't be Beyonce. That one's too obvious. I know what I'd be. I'd be like a cowboy. I'd be like, my other personality is Dirk, the cowboy. But this is what I mean. Is people were just using it to get on TV or, sell their story to a newspaper, and they weren't real. So, over time, the story began to settle. Shirley moved away from New York, and things started to calm down around the Sybil story, but it was never really forgotten. And let's just think, what happened to the 4 women who were involved in this story? Well, let's start with Mattie, Shirley's mother. Mattie was institutionalised and diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, and she died in an institution. Flora, the writer, she continued a very successful life as a writer and gained a somewhat celebrity status due to the story. Dr. Cornelia Wilbur. Well, she moved from New York to Kentucky, and when there she still practiced psychiatry. And Shirley, or Sybil, well, Shirley, she also moved to Kentucky so that she could be near where her doctor was. The 2 women, they grew old together. In 1990, Shirley was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she died fairly soon after, with Dr. Wilbur caring for her in her last few months. In fact, the 2 women moved in together and lived together until they were both dead. In 1992, Dr. Wilbur died of complications relating to Parkinson's disease. The story of Shirley Mason will live on for years, and it has done. It has been the subject of so many different TV shows, articles, psychology journals, and that's because it still remains a mystery. Was it real? Was it not? And what a lot of these psychiatrists will ask is there a place for hysterics and hysterical women in history that was misunderstood? Now, the house that both of these women shared, it was put up for sale. And underneath the house, they discovered, when both were long gone, that there were 100 different paintings by Shirley. And they were dated from the years before she began her therapy until the years long after. Many of them were unsigned. And the theory around the so-called hidden paintings by Shirley, the reason they were discovered unsigned is because we will never know which personality painted which painting. And so ends the story. Alrighty. Well then, I hope you enjoyed that one. Yeah, you may have heard the Sybil story before. I just think it's absolutely fascinating. And in fact, what I realised today is I told a story long time ago of a guy called Billy Milligan. See if this jogs your memory. He was the guy who had multiple personalities and he committed crimes. In fact, he murdered some people and he didn't go to prison for it because in court they were able to prove that it was his other personalities. Well, get this. Guess who was in court in support of Billy Milligan? Dr. Wilbur. She was the woman who on the stand said he had no idea what he was doing when he was these other people. So there you go. There you have it. Alrighty, well I hope you enjoyed this story. And until the next time we speak, okay, goodbye.
It didn't affect me really one way or the other. I would imagine from the look on his face, let's get it on, let's do it, let's get it over. Let's get it on, let's do it, let's get it over.